It's time to do some French knots. Now I stitched my veins, as in the last step. I applied a little bit of heat, really just with the tip of the iron to get rid of the friction pen lines. And I've put my wings back in the hoop because it's easier to do French knots in a hoop when the fabric is taut. So I've got 3 strands of black cotton, DMC cotton thread, in an embroidery needle. I have, let me just show you on the pattern, I used the friction pen method, putting pins in and then marking the dots, little dots. We're not going to do the dots at the very end, so this one, or this one, because they will be sewn over when we stitch around the edge with a zigzag stitch. We will go back at the end and put in those 3 that are missing. Right, so let's go. If you know how to do French knots already and you're an expert and everything, at this stage you will just do your French knots, leaving the ones off that I just showed you. Go over to this side and do those, and then do, I think they're just 2 on each of these, and you'll be good to go to the next step where we will stitch around the edge. But if you don't know about French knots, you don't know how to do them, then I'll show you. So I'm using 3 strands because I like them to be pretty big. Also, if I don't, they'll get lost in this textured fabric. So let's get started. Come up. You've had a knot in your thread, and what you're going to do is pass the thread around your needle like that, holding on to the thread with your non-dominant hand. Go back down in, but not in the same hole. It'll pull it all through. Make sure that your thread is taut here and it's all the way down at the edge of the needle. Push your needle through, pop it through, and there's your knot. Moving on to the next one. Same thing. Wrap your thread around once. Go in, holding that thread and keeping it right down at the base, right against the fabric. I'm going to move right on up to this one. See, it works every time, as long as, that's the trick, as long as you hold that thread taut. All right, let's do it again. So wrap it back down in, right next to it, but not in the same hole. Pulling this thread tight and moving the knot all the way down to the fabric, against the fabric. Grab your needle from underneath and pull. Not too hard. You want to pull, you want your knot to be raised. Okay, we have 1 more in that bunch, and then we have 2 more after that, because these little dots where there were 3, and then there were 3, and then there are 3 more. So we've taken off the 2 on the ends. And at the end, we'll come back and put those on. You'll be expert by that time. In French knots, you will have done so many. There you go. There's another one. And the end ones, we will do them, of course, without the hoop, because the hoop will be gone by then. We will have detached these, and they'll be sewn around. So you'll also get practice in doing a French knot without the hoop. Okay, still moving on up here. And 1 more. So there we have it. If you want to play around with the size of the knots a little bit more, like they were on the actual moth or on the pattern. You could use the triple thread for these 3. Then for the next 6, you could go to a double thread, and they would be a little bit smaller. Alternately, if you want your moths to look like a piece of jewelry, you could use beads, really tiny seed beads. So that's a possibility too, and they'll make the moth shine as it moves. So there you have it. So I'll let you finish up your French knots. Continuing on with the French knots on the upper wings, I've decided to use 2 strands of cotton for these 2 tiny little spots because I think they were smaller on the moth. So same thing, come up, you put a knot in it so it doesn't pull through in your thread. Turn it once. You could also turn it twice, but I want them to be really tiny. Oops, don't want to do that. And as you can see, they're tinier. I'm going over here to do this one. Much more tiny and then delicate, more delicate. Same thing, I'm just wrapping once. Holding my thread close to the fabric and popping it through. Right, now there's also this one over here, but I do not want to put my thread that far away underneath, so I'm going to tie my knot here just by making a loop and going through the loop. Right. So this one, I think I will do it with, I think I'll go ahead and do it with 2 strands as well. I will just tie a knot in my thread, so prepare your knot and stitch it all by itself and then make your knot underneath because it's too far away to drag your thread over from any of these other spots. There it is, and you can make a knot by going under one of your stitches, your machine stitches. Make a loop, go through the loop. And so we've nearly finished one wing. Do the same over here. I'll show you one more and then you'll be on your own. So I've marked the two little dots on the underwing, and I'm going to show you what happens if you want to make a little bit of a bigger knot. So I'm going to come up the same way. Let me get up there. Okay. And instead of turning it once, I'll just turn it twice. So as before, needle, under, but twice instead of once. Same thing, go back down and pull through. Just a bit of a bigger knot. So anyway, play around with your different sizes, your different textures, different number of threads in your needle. If you're really a true beginner with French knots, practice out along the borders on the fabric before you dive into putting them on your moth.